The rain fell in sheets, turning the streets of Maplewood into rivers that shimmered under the dim glow of streetlights. It was one of those nights when nature seemed to be putting on a show, a performance filled with thunderous applause from the sky and lightning strikes painting flashes of brilliance across the horizon. But for Jake Thompson, it was just another inconvenient storm. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself as he walked down the deserted road, his umbrella barely holding up against the relentless wind. Jake wasn't someone who stood out in a crowd. At 32 years old, he lived a simple life. He worked at a small mechanic shop on the edge of town, fixing cars for people whose names he often forgot once they drove away. His days were predictable, even mundane, but he didn't mind. Predictability had its own kind of comfort. Tonight, however, fate had other plans. Earlier that evening, Jake's car had sputtered to a stop halfway between work and home. The engine gave out without warning, leaving him stranded by the side of the highway. After trying and failing to restart it, he decided there was no point waiting in the pouring rain for a tow truck that might take hours to arrive. So, he locked the car and started walking, his shoes squelching with every step. As he trudged along, head bowed against the storm, something caught his eye. A figure struggling beside a dark sedan parked haphazardly near the curb. Squinting through the rain, Jake could make out the silhouette of a woman leaning heavily against the vehicle, her arms pushing futilely at the back bumper. Her efforts looked futile. The car wasn't budging an inch. For a moment, Jake hesitated. Strangers weren't exactly his specialty. He preferred keeping to himself, avoiding complications whenever possible, but something about the scene tugged at him. A mix of pity and instinct. Maybe it was the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, as if afraid someone might appear out of nowhere. Or maybe it was the sheer absurdity of two people being stuck in such miserable weather. Whatever it was, Jake couldn't ignore it. He adjusted his grip on the umbrella and jogged toward her, splashing through puddles as he went. "Hey!" he called out, raising his voice above the howling wind. "Need a hand?" The woman turned quickly, startled by the sound of his voice. When she saw him, relief washed over her face. "Oh, thank God," she said, her words barely audible over the storm. "I don't know what happened. The engine just died and I can't get it moving." Jake nodded, already assessing the situation. "Let me give you a push. We'll get it off the road at least." Without waiting for a response, he positioned himself behind the car and braced his hands against the trunk. Together they pushed with all their strength, the tires groaning as they finally rolled forward. Slowly but surely, the sedan moved into a nearby parking lot where it would be safe until morning. Breathing hard, Jake straightened up and wiped the rain from his face. The woman leaned against the car, equally drenched but visibly grateful. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice warm despite the cold. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." "No problem," Jake replied, with a shrug. "Just glad I could help." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a soggy business card. Scribbling something hastily on the back, she handed it to him. "If you ever need anything at all, don't hesitate to call." She smiled, though there was a hint of mystery in her eyes. "My name's Elena." Jake took the card, glancing at it briefly before slipping it into his jacket. "Thanks," he said, unsure of what else to say. They exchanged a few more polite words before parting ways, each heading in opposite directions. As Jake continued his walk home, he found himself thinking about the encounter. There was something odd about Elena, not in a bad way, but in a way that made him curious. She hadn't seemed like the average person stranded on the side of the road. Her confidence, even in the middle of a storm, felt practiced, almost rehearsed. And then there was the business card. Most people carried plain ones with company logos or titles, but hers was blank except for her name and the hastily written number. Still, Jake shook off the thoughts. He was probably reading too much into it. People got stuck in bad situations, all the time, and helping them was just the right thing to do. Besides, he doubted he'd ever see Elena again. Life in Maplewood was quiet, predictable, and uneventful. Nothing exciting ever happened here, or so he thought. Little did Jake know this chance meeting would set off a chain of events that would turn his ordinary existence upside down. In less than 24 hours, he'd find himself thrust into a world far beyond anything he could have imagined. For now, though, he simply walked home, dripping wet and oblivious to the storm brewing not in the sky, but in the stars above. The morning after the storm dawned bright and clear, as if the previous night's chaos had never happened. The sun shone warmly over Maplewood, drying the puddles that lingered on sidewalks and roads. Jake woke up late, his body stiff from walking, home in the rain. He stretched lazily, feeling grateful for the calmness of the day ahead. For a moment, he almost forgot about Elena and the strange encounter by the roadside. After a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, Jake headed to work. The mechanic shop was located on the outskirts of town, nestled between rows of warehouses and empty fields. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and Jake liked the quiet rhythm of fixing engines and troubleshooting problems. As he pulled into the parking lot, he noticed something unusual, a low rumble in the distance, like distant thunder. But the sky was cloudless, so it couldn't be a storm. Curiosity got the better of him. Jake stepped out of his car and looked around. That's when he saw it. A massive helicopter hovering above the field behind the shop. Its sleek design gleamed in the sunlight, and its rotors churned the air with a deafening roar. People began gathering outside, his co-workers, customers, even passers-by, all staring at the spectacle with wide eyes. Jake joined the crowd, squinting against the wind kicked up by the chopper's blades. Slowly the helicopter descended, touching, down gently in the open field. Dust swirled violently as the rotor slowed, and then silence fell over the area. Everyone held their breath, unsure of what would happen next. A group of men emerged from the helicopter, dressed in sharp suits that looked out of place in the rural setting. They moved with purpose, their expressions unreadable. One of them carried a clipboard while another scanned the surroundings with sharp, calculating eyes. Then, one of the men approached Jake directly. "Mr. Thompson?" the man asked, his voice firm yet calm. He flashed a badge identifying himself as Agent Carter. "We'd like to speak with you privately." Jake blinked, taken aback. "Me? What? Why?" Agent Carter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward the helicopter. "It's best if we discuss this elsewhere. Please come with us." Jake glanced at the growing crowd, searching for some kind of reassurance. His co-workers shrugged, equally confused. The whole situation felt surreal, like something out of a movie. Still, Jake didn't resist. Something about Agent Carter's tone suggested there was no room for argument. Reluctantly, he followed the men toward the helicopter. Inside, the interior was sleek and high-tech, unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Screens displayed maps and data streams, while crew members typed furiously on keyboards or spoke into headsets. Jake sat down nervously, clutching the armrests as the helicopter lifted off the ground. Through the window, he watched Maplewood shrink beneath him, replaced by sprawling fields and dense forests. Then, just as Jake was starting to wonder where they were headed, the door to the cockpit opened. Out stepped Elena, the same woman he'd helped the night before. She looked completely different now. Gone was the vulnerable stranger struggling with her car. In her place stood a confident, authoritative figure wearing an earpiece and speaking commands to unseen operatives. Her presence filled the cabin, demanding attention without effort. When she turned to face Jake, her expression softened slightly. "Jake," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I owe you an explanation." Jake stared at her, dumbfounded. "What's going on? Who are these guys? Why am I here?" Elena sighed, sitting across from him. "First, let me say thank you again for helping me last night. You have no idea how much that meant, not just to me, but to, well, everyone." Jake frowned. "Everyone? What are you talking about?" Elena hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Jake, I'm not who you think I am. Last night when my car broke down, it wasn't an accident. I was testing a failsafe, a beacon embedded in the vehicle designed to summon reinforcements in case of emergencies. When you helped me push the car, you activated that beacon. Jake's mind raced. Wait, back up. What kind of beacon? And reinforcements for what? Elena leaned forward, lowering her voice. Aliens, Jake. Extraterrestrial life. They've been watching us for decades, studying us, probing our defenses. Some factions are peaceful, but others, let's just say they're not. Jake laughed nervously, shaking his head. You're joking, right? This is some kind of prank, isn't it? But Elena's expression remained serious. I wish it were a joke. Humanity has known about alien life for years, but instead of panicking the public, governments worldwide decided to prepare quietly. We've been building weapons, developing technology, and training soldiers all in secret. And now, thanks to you, we've been given an opportunity to reveal ourselves. Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Aliens. Secret. Weapons? None of it made sense. Yet deep down he couldn't dismiss it entirely. The helicopter, the suits, Elena's transformation, it all pointed to something far bigger than he could comprehend. So what happens now? He asked cautiously. Elena smiled faintly. Now you're going to see something extraordinary. Something that will change everything you thought you knew about humanity, and about yourself. As the helicopter continued its flight, Jake gazed. Out the window, his thoughts spinning. Below, the landscape blurred into a patchwork of green and brown. Above, the sky stretched endlessly, vast and mysterious. For the first time in his life, Jake felt small, not just physically, but in the grand scheme of things. Whatever lay ahead, he realized, was beyond his control. All he could do was hold on tight and trust that Elena knew what she was doing. Eventually, the helicopter began descending toward a remote airstrip surrounded by dense forest. As they landed, Jake spotted several military vehicles parked nearby, along with more suited agents waiting patiently. The scene was tense, charged with an energy that made Jake's heart race. Once on the ground, Elena led him toward a large hangar. Inside, Jake's jaw dropped. Rows of advanced machinery lined the walls, glowing softly with blue lights. Scientists in lab coats bustled about, adjusting settings on consoles and monitoring screens filled with incomprehensible data. In the center of the room stood what appeared to be a massive spacecraft, sleek and metallic, with a design unlike anything Jake had ever seen. This, Elena said proudly, gesturing to the ship, is humanity's ace in the hole. A star destroyer, capable of defending Earth against any threat. And soon you'll understand why we needed someone like you. Jake swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. Just yesterday he was a nobody, a mechanic living a quiet, unremarkable life. Now he was standing in the middle of a top-secret facility, staring at a spaceship straight out of science fiction. He didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or run, screaming into the woods. But one thing was certain. Jake Thompson's ordinary life was officially over. Whether he liked it or not, he was about to become part of something far greater than himself. And as Elena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, Jake couldn't help but wonder, what exactly had he gotten himself into? The hangar was alive with activity, a hive of controlled chaos. Scientists in lab coats scurried between consoles, their fingers flying over keyboards as they adjusted settings and monitored streams of data. Engineers climbed ladders to inspect the sleek surface of the Star Destroyer, ensuring every inch of its metallic hull was flawless. Soldiers stood at attention near the entrance, their weapons holstered but ready, their faces unreadable masks of discipline. It was clear that this wasn't just any operation. It was a mission of monumental importance. Jake felt like an outsider, a fish out of water thrust into unfamiliar territory. He stared wide-eyed at the massive spacecraft dominating the room, its size overwhelming. The ship gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, its design both alien and futuristic. Its sharp edges and smooth curves suggested speed and power, while the faint hum emanating from within hinted at unimaginable energy coursing through its core. To Jake, it looked less like a machine and more like a living, breathing entity, a guardian waiting to awaken. Elena guided him toward a nearby workstation, where a holographic display hovered above a circular table. She tapped a few commands, and the projection shifted to show images of Earth surrounded by clusters of alien ships. Some were jagged and menacing, resembling predators circling prey. Others were sleek and elegant, their design suggesting advanced technology far beyond human comprehension. These are reconnaissance vessels, Elena explained, pointing to the smaller crafts orbiting Earth. They've been observing us for decades, mapping our cities, studying our behavior, testing our defenses. Most of them belong to factions that mean no harm. But others? Her voice trailed off, her expression darkening. Others have more sinister intentions. Jake leaned closer, his curiosity outweighing his fear. What kind of intentions? Elena hesitated before answering. Some believe humanity is a threat, an unpredictable species capable of destroying itself and anything else we encounter. Others see us as resources, raw materials to be harvested, land to be colonized. And then there are those who view us as weak, easy targets ripe for conquest. Jake's stomach churned at the implications. For years he'd assumed humanity was alone in the universe, isolated on a tiny blue planet spinning quietly through space. Now he was being told that not only were they not alone, but they were also constantly under surveillance, and possibly in danger. But why now? Jake asked, his voice trembling slightly. Why reveal all this to me? Why activate your beacon, last night? Elena smiled faintly, appreciating his questions. Because last night you proved something important. You acted selflessly. You didn't hesitate to help someone in need even when it meant stepping out of your comfort zone. That quality, compassion, is rare, especially in times of crisis. We needed someone like you to trigger the failsafe because it symbolizes what makes humanity unique. Jake frowned, still struggling to process everything. I don't understand. How does helping you push a car lead to whatever this is? Elena pointed to the hologram again, zooming in on a cluster of alien ships positioned near Earth's moon. When you activated the beacon, it sent a signal to our fleet, a network of star destroyers hidden in orbit around Earth. These ships aren't just defensive, they're offensive, designed to deter any hostile forces. By revealing ourselves strategically, we send a message. Humanity is prepared to fight back. Jake's mind raced. The idea of Earth having a secret fleet of starships was staggering enough, but the notion that he'd played a role in unveiling them was almost too much to comprehend. So, what happens next? Before Elena could answer, alarms blared throughout the hangar. Red lights flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Everyone froze, their attention snapping toward the main view screen mounted high, above the workspace. On it, a live feed showed dozens of alien ships emerging from hyperspace, their arrival announced by bursts of light and energy. They moved with precision, forming a tight formation that loomed ominously over Earth's atmosphere. They're here, Elena said grimly, her tone shifting from explanatory to urgent. This is it, Jake. The moment we've been preparing for. Without hesitation, she grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him toward the Star Destroyer. Come on, there's no time to waste. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was electric. Crew members manned their stations, their movements efficient and practiced. Jake followed Elena to the bridge where a panoramic window offered a breathtaking view of space. Below them, Earth hung suspended against a backdrop of infinite stars, its beauty both fragile and awe-inspiring. As the alien fleet approached, communication attempts were initiated. Messages were transmitted in various frequencies, hoping to establish dialogue, but the response or lack thereof was chilling. The alien ships continued advancing, ignoring all attempts at contact. Tension mounted as the distance between the two fleets closed. Then, without warning, the aliens fired. A barrage of energy beams streaked across the void, striking one of the smaller human vessels stationed near Earth's orbit. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through space, and the damaged ship began drifting uncontrollably. Panic rippled through the bridge, but Elena remained calm. Activate the cloak disengagement protocol, she ordered sharply. Let them see what they're up against. A crew member nodded and typed furiously on a console. Moments later, the Star Destroyer shuddered as its cloaking device powered down. Slowly, majestically, the ship materialized in full view of the alien fleet. Its sheer size dwarfed the enemy vessels, its weapon systems glowing ominously as they came online, and it wasn't alone. One by one, other Star Destroyers revealed themselves, emerging from hiding spots scattered across the solar system. Within seconds, Earth was surrounded by a protective barrier of human-made warships, each bristling with firepower capable of obliterating entire fleets. The aliens faltered, their confidence shaken. Their ships paused mid-advance, clearly unprepared for such a formidable display of resistance. Back on Earth, millions of people gazed upward in wonder as the skies seemed to split open, revealing the gleaming hulls of humanity's defenders. Social media erupted with videos and photos, theories, and prayers. No one knew exactly what was happening, but one thing was certain. Earth was no longer defenseless. On the bridge, Jake watched it all unfold with a mixture of disbelief and pride. He had never imagined himself playing a role in something so monumental. Yet here he was, standing among heroes, witnessing history in the making. Elena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did this, Jake. Your actions set this chain reaction in motion. Without you, none of this would have happened." Jake shook his head, overwhelmed. "I didn't do anything special. I just helped someone in the rain." "That's exactly the point," Elena replied softly. "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can ripple outward, changing destinies in ways we never expect." As the standoff continued, Jake realized that humanity's strength lay not just in its technology or weapons, but in its spirit. Compassion, courage, and resilience defined them, setting them apart from the cold logic of their adversaries. And for the first time in his life, Jake felt truly proud to be human. The tension aboard the Star Destroyer was palpable, a mix of awe and anxiety hanging in the air. On the bridge, Jake stood frozen, his eyes glued to the panoramic window as the alien fleet hovered menacingly in the distance. Their ships were unlike anything he'd ever seen, jagged, asymmetrical designs that looked like they belonged to some predatory species from another dimension. Each vessel pulsed with an eerie glow, their surfaces shifting subtly, almost alive. It was clear these weren't explorers or diplomats. They were warriors, built for destruction. Elena moved swiftly among the crew, issuing commands with precision and authority. Her voice never wavered, even as the aliens fired another volley of energy beams. This time, however, the human fleet was ready. The Star Destroyer's shields flared brightly, absorbing the impact without so much as a scratch. The crew erupted into cheers, but Elena silenced them with a sharp glance. "Stay focused," she barked. "This isn't over yet." Jake couldn't help but marvel at her composure. Just hours ago, she had been a stranger stranded by the side of the road, vulnerable and alone. Now she was leading humanity's defense against an interstellar threat. He wondered how many other layers there were to this woman, and how much more she had kept hidden. As the standoff continued, the aliens regrouped, their movements deliberate and calculated. They seemed confused, perhaps even frightened, by the sudden appearance of Earth's fleet. For decades, they had watched humanity from afar, studying its weaknesses and assuming it posed no real threat. But now, faced with an armada of advanced warships, their confidence began to crumble. Back on Earth, the revelation of humanity's secret weapon sent shockwaves through society. People everywhere looked up at the sky, their phones raised to capture the moment when dozens of gleaming Star Destroyers materialized above the planet. Social media exploded with speculation. Some hailed it as proof of humanity's ingenuity and resilience. Others panicked, fearing retaliation from the aliens. News anchors scrambled to make sense of the unfolding events, their voices trembling as they described scenes straight out of science fiction. In cities and towns around the world, people gathered in parks and streets, staring upward in collective disbelief. Children pointed excitedly at the glowing ships, while adults whispered prayers or clung to loved ones. Even skeptics found themselves awestruck, unable to deny the evidence before their eyes. For the first time in history, humanity stood united, not just as nations, but as a single species facing an existential threat. On board the Star Destroyer, Jake felt a strange sense of pride swelling within him. Despite the chaos and uncertainty, he realized something profound. Humanity wasn't defined by its divisions or flaws. It was defined by its ability to come together in moments of crisis, to innovate and adapt, to protect what mattered most. And standing here, surrounded by people who had dedicated their lives to safeguarding Earth, Jake understood that he was part of something greater than himself. But the battle wasn't over yet. The aliens launched another attack, this time targeting one of the smaller human vessels stationed near Earth's orbit. The ship shuddered under the assault, its shields flickering dangerously. The crew aboard the Star Destroyer sprang into action, rerouting power to reinforce the damaged vessel's defenses. Laser cannons hummed to life, their barrels glowing with stored energy. "Target their lead ship," Elena commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "Let's show them we mean business." The order was carried out instantly. A barrage of plasma bolts erupted from the Star Destroyer's cannons, streaking across space with blinding speed. The first shot struck true, tearing through the alien flagship's hull. The explosion lit up the void, sending debris spiraling outward. The remaining alien ships scattered, clearly unprepared for such a devastating counterattack. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Elena remained focused. "Don't let your guard down," she warned. "They're retreating, but they'll be back. We need to prepare for the next wave." Jake nodded silently, his heart pounding in his chest. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, a mechanic living a quiet, predictable life. But now, he was witnessing history unfold, playing a role in humanity's fight for survival. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and humbling all at once. As the alien fleet retreated further into space, the human ships maintained their positions, forming a protective barrier around Earth. On the bridge, the crew worked tirelessly to monitor the situation, ensuring no enemy slipped past their defenses. Scientists analyzed data streams, searching for clues about the aliens' origins and motives. Soldiers manned their posts, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. For Jake, the experience was overwhelming. He wandered the corridors of the Star Destroyer, taking in the sights and sounds of humanity's greatest achievement. Everywhere he looked, he saw signs of determination and hope. Engineers tinkered with machinery, soldiers checked their weapons, and scientists pored over screens filled with complex equations and schematics. It was a hive of activity, a testament to what humans could accomplish when they set aside their differences and worked toward a common goal. Eventually, Jake found himself back on the bridge, gazing out at Earth below. From this vantage point, the planet looked peaceful and serene, its blue oceans and green continents glowing softly in the sunlight. It was hard to believe that such beauty could inspire fear or envy in others. Yet here they were, defending it against forces they barely understood. Elena joined him, her expression thoughtful. "What do you think?" she asked, nodding toward the view. Jake hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I'm proud to be part of this, proud to be human. We might not be perfect, but we're survivors, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect our home." Elena smiled, faintly, her gaze softening. "That's exactly why I chose you, Jake. You embody everything that makes us strong: compassion, courage, resilience. When you helped me last night, you reminded me of why we're fighting, not just for survival, but for the future, for everyone who calls Earth home." Jake felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't considered himself heroic or special, but hearing those words made him realize that maybe he didn't have to be. Maybe being human was enough. Hours passed, and the alien fleet remained at a safe distance, unwilling to engage further. It was clear they had underestimated humanity, and now they were rethinking their strategy. For the moment, Earth was safe, but everyone knew this was only the beginning. As the day drew to a close, Jake returned to his quarters, exhausted but invigorated. Lying on the narrow bunk, he stared at the ceiling, replaying the events of the past 24 hours in his mind. Everything had changed so quickly, so dramatically. He wondered what the future held, not just for him, but for humanity as a whole. Would they continue to stand united? Would they find a way to coexist peacefully with the aliens, or would conflict escalate into full-blown war? There were no easy answers, but one thing was certain: Humanity had proven itself capable of rising to the challenge, and as long as people like Jake and Elena were willing to step up, Earth had a fighting chance. Little did Jake know, his journey was far from over. The aliens might have retreated for now, but their presence lingered like a shadow over Earth's skies. And somewhere out there, beyond the stars, new threats loomed, waiting to test humanity's resolve once again. The days following the alien standoff passed in a blur for Jake. Life aboard the Star Destroyer was both exhilarating and exhausting, a constant whirlwind of activity as humanity prepared for whatever might come next. The aliens had retreated, but their presence lingered like an unspoken threat, a reminder that Earth's newfound strength didn't guarantee peace. If anything, it signaled the beginning of a new chapter, one where humanity would need to navigate uncharted territory, not just in space, but within itself. Elena kept Jake close, introducing him to key figures in the program and explaining the intricacies of humanity's defense strategy. At first, he felt out of place among the scientists, engineers, and soldiers who seemed to speak a language of equations, acronyms, and military jargon. But over time, he began to find his footing. His perspective as an outsider, someone who had lived an ordinary life before being thrust into extraordinary circumstances, proved invaluable. He asked questions others took for granted, challenged assumptions, and offered fresh insights that often led to breakthroughs. One evening, as the ship orbited Earth, Jake found himself alone on the observation deck. The vast expanse of stars stretched endlessly before him, their light twinkling faintly against the infinite darkness. Below, Earth glowed softly, its beauty undiminished by the chaos unfolding above. Jake leaned against the railing, lost in thought. Despite everything he'd seen and experienced, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that humanity's greatest challenges still lay ahead. Elena joined him moments later, her presence calming yet commanding. She carried a tablet in one hand, its screen displaying updates from various sectors of the fleet. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. Jake shrugged, offering a small smile. "I'm getting used to it. Still feels surreal, though." Elena nodded knowingly. "It does for all of us, even after years of preparation. What we're doing here, it changes everything, not just for humanity, but for every species out there watching." Jake turned to face her, curiosity sparking in his eyes. "Do you think they'll come back? The aliens, I mean." "They will," Elena replied without hesitation, "but not today. For now, they know we're not to be trifled with. That buys us time. Time to strengthen our defenses, build alliances, and figure out how to coexist peacefully if possible." "Coexistence," Jake murmured, testing the word. "Is that really possible, after everything they've done?" "It has to be," Elena said firmly. "War isn't the answer, not when it comes to entire civilizations. We can't afford to let fear dictate our actions. If we do, we risk becoming what we're fighting against." Her words resonated deeply with Jake. Over the past few days, he had witnessed firsthand the power of compassion and cooperation. Humanity's ability to unite in the face of adversity was remarkable, but sustaining that unity would require more than courage. It would demand wisdom, patience, and understanding. As they stood side by side, gazing at the cosmos, Elena handed Jake the tablet. On it was a proposal outlining a new initiative, Project Horizon. Designed to foster communication and collaboration between humans and extraterrestrial species, the project aimed to establish diplomatic channels and promote mutual respect. It was ambitious, risky even, but Elena believed it was necessary. "We want you to lead it," she said simply. Jake stared at her, stunned. "Me? Why me? I'm just a mechanic." "You're more than that," Elena countered. "You represent what makes us human, the willingness to help, to adapt, to grow. You activated the beacon that revealed our fleet, showing the world, and the universe, that humanity is ready to stand its ground. Now we need someone like you to show them we're also ready to extend a hand." For a moment, Jake was speechless. The weight of the responsibility pressed down on him, heavy, yet strangely empowering. He thought about the woman he'd helped in the rain, the chain reaction that followed, and the journey that had brought him here. It wasn't fate or luck. It was choice. Choices made by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. "I'll do it," Jake said finally, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside him. "But only if you promise to stick around. I'm going to need your guidance." Elena smiled, relief evident in her expression. "Deal." In the weeks that followed, Project Horizon gained momentum. Under Jake's leadership, teams of linguists, diplomats, and scientists worked tirelessly to decode alien languages, study their cultures, and identify potential allies. Messages were sent into deep space, invitations extended to peaceful factions willing to engage in dialogue. Slowly but surely responses trickled in, some cautious, others curious, but all hopeful. Back on Earth, news of the project sparked widespread debate. Some celebrated it as a bold step toward interstellar diplomacy, while others criticized it as naive or reckless. Protests erupted in major cities, with citizens divided over whether humanity should trust outsiders after centuries of isolation. Yet amidst the turmoil, stories of hope emerged. Children drew pictures of humans and aliens shaking hands. Artists painted murals depicting unity across galaxies. Musicians composed songs inspired by the idea of coexistence. Jake became a symbol of this movement, his name synonymous with resilience and optimism. Interviews, speeches, and appearances filled his schedule, but he never lost sight of why he was doing this. Every decision he made, every word he spoke, stemmed from a simple belief: that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its weapons or technology, but in its capacity for kindness and understanding. One day, as Jake addressed a global audience via satellite broadcast, he reflected on how far he'd come. Standing on a stage surrounded by representatives from nations, organizations, and communities worldwide, he felt a profound sense of purpose. "When I helped a stranger in the rain," he began, his voice echoing through millions of homes, "I had no idea it would lead me here. I didn't know it would change my life, or yours. But sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can ripple outward, shaping destinies in ways we never expect. Today we face a choice: to let fear divide us, or to let compassion guide us. Let's choose wisely. Let's choose hope." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers reverberating across continents. In that moment, Jake realized something important. Humanity's future wasn't written in stone. It was shaped by choices made by individuals brave enough to believe in a better tomorrow. Months turned into years, and Project Horizon bore fruit. Peace treaties were signed with certain alien factions, trade routes established, and cultural exchanges initiated. Schools taught lessons about interstellar relations, and museums showcased artifacts from distant worlds. Humanity stepped boldly into the stars, no longer confined to its tiny blue planet. Through it all, Jake remained at the forefront, guiding the initiative with humility and determination. He never forgot his roots, returning frequently to Maplewood to visit old friends and share stories of his adventures. To them, he was still Jake Thompson, the quiet mechanic who fixed cars and minded his own business. And perhaps that was fitting, for in the end, it wasn't titles or accolades that defined him. It was the simple act of helping someone in need, the spark that ignited a revolution. As he stood once again on the observation deck of the Star Destroyer, staring out at the endless expanse of stars, Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had also been rewarding beyond measure. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, not because it was perfect, but because it refused to give up. Somewhere out there, among the countless planets and civilizations, new opportunities awaited. New friendships, discoveries, and challenges lay ahead. And Jake knew, without a doubt, that humanity was ready. With a final glance at Earth below, Jake whispered softly to himself, "We've got this." And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it.